Everyone uses NanoBanana, Seedream, or Desia, which can be triggered directly on websites. However, you can run very good artificial intelligences directly on your own computer. And as you can see, they can be in very different styles and also very targeted. The advantage is that you'll have models designed for specific tasks, which can therefore be run locally on your computer, so at no cost, and you'll also have access to a huge variety of models. But there are also significant drawbacks, and I will show you and guide you step by step so you can run your first AI locally on your computer. So we're going to talk a bit about Lora models and also about tools that will allow you to generate images, but also videos. The following site lists a huge number of models that are available for free, as well as Lora models. So what is the difference between the two and what do you need? A model, or what we call here a checkpoint, will allow you to generate an image, or for example, a video. For example, a very powerful and well-known model is Stable Diffusion. There are plenty of different versions, and as you can see, you can get very high-quality results with text handling, photorealism, 3D or 2D. These are models that are accessible to everyone as soon as you download and run them on your computer. And we can also say, for example, that NanoBanana is a model or that Seedream is a model. The difference is that when you access their website, for example, NanoBanana by Google or Seedream by Dreamina, or the image generator from ChatGPT, you have to pay to use their server power, their monumental computing power. In this way, you'll be able to get an image in just a few seconds. And these models, especially NanoBanana, are not directly accessible for you to run on your own computer. On the other hand, models like Stable Diffusion, which are really high quality, are accessible to everyone, so you can use them on your own computer or run them on a server and charge other people for access. A model will therefore allow you to generate images or videos, and some models are better at generating anime-style images like these or realistic images. But maybe at some point you want to do something very specific. For example, the model was trained on realistic images, but you have a sports and fitness club and you want to create very specific images related to fitness. In that case, we use a small additional module called a Lora, which has been specifically trained on this theme and, as a result, can very precisely reproduce elements of a particular subject. So, on one hand, you'll use your high-quality model that has a general understanding of images, and then, for example, you'll add a Lora on top of that, which is trained and will allow you to get much more refined and precise results on a specific theme. If I go, for example, to this site, which is the go-to place for downloading models, and Loras, there's also Hugging Face, but the two are closely connected. Well, I can see here, for example, Checkpoint. That's a model, and here, Lora, that's a Lora, and I think, okay, let's say I want to generate images related to fitness. I come here, I search for fitness, and here you can see that I have a Lora that's dedicated to achieving this kind of result. And here, for example, I click on this Lora and I'll get something that's been specifically trained to reproduce this character each time in yoga settings. What's interesting to look at here are the ratings, which are very positive, and after that, of course, everything will depend on testing. Not to mention that the base model I'll be able to use it with is Flux 1D. So if I want to use this Lora, I'll need to use the Flux model. So when you've chosen your model, and it will very often be Flux or SDXL or Stable Diffusion, you need to choose the Loras that match. That's why if I'm searching for a Lora, I can also filter by model here. So in this case, I'm searching for the keyword fitness, and here I'll, for example, select SDXL, and I'll automatically get a filter. So thanks to this site, I'll be able to download both models and Loras that are already trained. But now, how do we actually run them? As I mentioned, it's important to note that the servers of the tools you use, like NanoBanana or ChatGPT, have tremendous processing power, which allows you to generate images in just a few seconds. In our case, even with a top-tier setup, it will still take several minutes to generate a single image, and the more parameters you accumulate, for example Aura, or using a large model, the more likely you are to end up waiting a very long time, and that's a real problem if you want to be efficient in your creative process. On top of that, let me tell you that AIs like those from ChatGPT, Google, NanoBanana, and so on have been trained to produce as few errors as possible, whereas, for example, Stable Diffusion or other models will generate quite a lot of errors that you'll have to fix using Aura, controllers, and parameters that are sometimes quite complicated. One of the most commonly used tools for generating images locally or on an external server is Comfy. On paper, as it's described, it sounds very appealing and very easy to use. You'll be able to have templates that you can reuse. There's a cloud version and you can see results that are actually quite impressive. But in reality, it's extremely complicated to manage to configure this kind of tool. I'll give you an example here. You have your workflow, which is completely empty, and you can use models and templates. And that's pretty interesting because, for example, you can generate videos with Kling, you can request photo variations, you can really automate anything you want. For example, here, a product image and video format. I click on it, and now you can see that we're faced with wiring going in every direction. And here, we're looking at a configuration that's extremely simple, and you'll end up with different modules that you need to interconnect. For example, here you enter create a product image, then you use the ByteDance model, you put your prompt here, and then you'll connect it to several modules. For example, the one that will allow you to save the image, but also another module that will let you use .ai.io to do a 360-degree rotation and save your video. Each time you have to choose several parameters, which are very simple here, by the way. It's the seed, the resolution of your image, the duration, and then you connect it to another module to do something else, like combining the videos and saving the final video. This one isn't particularly complicated in itself, and it's pretty easy to understand if you take a closer look. But I guarantee you that you very quickly end up with this kind of interface where you have lots of interconnected modules, and the slightest little parameter here will affect your entire output result, which becomes really hellish and a huge headache. Honestly, if you're not a real geek and AI enthusiast, I don't recommend this to you because you'll end up wasting 20 or 30 hours of work just to generate an image that would have taken you a few seconds with Nano Banana. Nevertheless, for professionals, it could be an interesting option. But fortunately, and this is why I made this video, there are other interfaces that are simpler and allow you to generate this kind of thing more easily, and above all, they're free. Let me mention Automatic 1111, which works on the same principle as ComfyUI, but with a simpler interface. Even though it doesn't look particularly appealing, it's already much simpler. But alongside that, there's the Draw Things app, which works extremely well. I encourage you to go to the website here and download the app. And as you can see in the pricing, it's completely free to generate anything you want locally. They also offer an option where you can use their server to generate whatever you want. And you'll see that the price is really quite reasonable. But in any case, to be able to follow this tutorial and do your first tests, and even if you have a very powerful machine, this is more than enough for you. And here, as you can see, we have an interface that's much more refined. So here, you'll discover the place where you can generate and run your image. And here you have basic, advanced, or all settings. What interests us here is that, first of all, we have the model. By clicking on this section, you'll be able to find lots of models that you can download. But be careful, each model takes up space. You could end up with 20-60 gigabytes just for one model. And as you can see, all of these are very interesting and are free. You can use Stable Diffusion, you can use One, you can use Qwen. In short, models that are modern and have great performance. Of course, each model has a specific use, and I really encourage you to go on ChatGPT or Gemini each time to ask whether a particular model will meet your requirements, for example, generating a realistic image. What we're going to do here is use Stable Diffusion version 2.1. I click on it, it tells me that it's going to download, and off we go. The model will be downloaded and installed automatically. Then, all I have to do is go to this section, just like with any LLM, and enter the prompt to request the image I want. I could also set the dimensions, the format, and also add a negative prompt, which will be very useful for guiding the image. Next, as you can see here, the Lora, I'll be able to add a Lora directly at this spot. And then, as for control, we won't cover it directly in this video, but it will allow you to adjust certain elements and, as mentioned, to have more control over your model, such as, for example, the position, but also sometimes to fix things if your image has 4 fingers instead of 5 on a hand. The model is now downloaded and installed directly here. So now I'm going to enter a prompt to generate an image here. Here, for example, I'll ask for a portrait of a smiling man at the office, and as you can see on the left side, I have several elements. We'll start with something small, 512 by 512, a square format. And then I'll show you the influence of the other elements, so let's get started. You see, it's starting to process, and here I have an estimated time of 44 seconds. Keep in mind that we're only using a single model. Here I have an M1 Pro, and the estimated time is going down. We're only at 512 by 512. Personally, I need 4K images, so with much higher resolutions. And so now I have my first batch of images generated locally, but as you can see, there are some elements that aren't necessarily very realistic. Here, the teeth have fused together. Here, the beard looks a bit odd, for example. There are buttons missing on the shirt. Well, that's not particularly serious, but we want to have a much higher quality result, and I'm going to show you the impact of these elements. I'll delete this image here, and as you can see, I've written step. The more steps you have, the more steps Lea will take to process the image and improve it so that it looks as realistic as possible. So what we're going to do is increase the number of steps, and here I'm going to push the slider up to 150 and regenerate this image. So of course I didn't give it any input image, and I just asked for a portrait of a smiling man at the office. So I'm gonna get a completely different person. And so here, as you can see, the image is being sculpted from A to Z. If you haven't seen my other videos, I actually explain how it works. The AI starts from a block it doesn't imagine. It sculpts within it to then try to define the image, and it's really interesting. And by the way, for those who want to go even further, you'll find a training course in the description along with a community of AI enthusiasts. We don't run anything locally because the AIs available online are much more powerful, and above all, allow you to work much faster. Nevertheless, it's extremely interesting to be able to generate things locally and see how it works. So here you can also see that compared to before, the estimated time has doubled. And here is the image that was generated as a result. It's already a bit more refined, but as you can see, there's a small issue with the eyes. Now the teeth have been fixed, the face has been corrected, and the texture here is better. So what could I do? Well, I could increase the quality to full HD to get a better resolution. If I want to reuse this character, I could use email image to image, for example, or go to the control section and input an image so it can take inspiration from it and iterate on top of it. What will interest us, of course, is then the Lora and the other elements here to get a good result. Here we can see that there are issues with the face, so it might be interesting to have a Lora that's been trained and will help improve all of this. So if I go to Lora here, you can see I have plenty of options available, and there are official ones displayed as well. What am I going to do? I'm going to capture this part here, then go back to my LLM and tell it directly. Here's the list I have. I'm using Stable Diffusion 2.0, and I need a Lora that improves the portrait of a man's image. It will tell me whether it's suitable or not, and of course it will give me other suggestions if needed. Just so you know, I can also go to CivitAI here and search for a Lora, and for example type in face. I filter by model type, click on Lora, and then I could for example select SDXL. I could then download the one I like to get much more refined results. For example here, the face helper. Here, for instance, it will suggest different Loras to help improve the result. For example here it recommends the link, but be careful, usually the links will be dead. It's better to search directly on CivitAI for the Lora using for example this text here. Also, don't hesitate to ask your LLM, ChatGPT, Gemini or whichever model which one is best suited for your goal. And in my case, since I couldn't find a suitable Lora, I paused the video just before and I switched to another model called Flux, which is actually a really great model. And thanks to this interface, you can switch between different models and different Loras very easily. And here you see this one is still 24 gigabytes. Now another important thing is that when you download models, you always see results that look incredible. And I guarantee you won't be able to get those initial results within the first few hours of using these different models. Quite simply because, as usual, everyone wants to sell their thing and everyone wants to always show the very best, not necessarily all the issues that come with it. And I know we're in a tutorial where I'm teaching you how to generate locally, and it's super interesting and important to understand how it works. But just know that I don't use this myself. I only use online services because it allows me to have AIs that are stable, avoid tinkering with everything, and get faster results. So it allows me to deliver and create much faster than running things locally. Nevertheless, I find it very interesting to see how it works, how it functions, if only to observe the influence of Loras, the influence of steps. And if you really have a day to devote to this, give it a try. It will help you understand a lot about artificial intelligence, and also why there are services you can pay for that in the end, save you a lot of time and spare you a lot of headaches. So here, as you can see, I'm using the Flux 2 model, and the estimated time to generate this image is 40 minutes. Just so you know, while generating this image, I ran into a lot of errors where the software completely crashed because I had almost no space left on my computer. I'm telling you this in full transparency because I really want to show you all the issues that can come up. If you have a client and you tell them, okay, I can do this or that for you, but every time for each image, you have to wait 40 minutes. Honestly, it's better to pay for a subscription of around 20 euros a month, for example, for Gemini Pro, and generate images there to get them almost instantly. Just so you know, my setup is an M1 Pro, so it runs faster on more recent computers. But still, we're talking about an M1 Pro, a processor that has never flinched when I'm editing 4K videos with Photoshop open, about 30 Google Chrome tabs, and plenty of other audio software running. And after almost an hour of generation, here is the result I got. So as you can see, it's pretty high quality. The images are quite well done, the character looks good, but still the waiting time was extremely long. So you can simply go to the model section here and change according to the models you want. You can copy and paste this entire list and ask Gemini, okay, I want, for example, 2D animation, 3D animation, portraits. And if each time you need to specialize things a bit, you go into the Loras and ask it for exactly what you want in particular. Be aware that for the other settings here, the higher the quality and resolution you request, the longer it will take. You have the text guidance, which will influence the impact of your text here. Another very important point, you can add a negative prompt if, for example, it starts putting text everywhere and you don't need it. In the advanced section, you have other elements that are described again each time, and these are additional models you can add, which will allow you to further refine your image. As for the control that allows you to provide input information, you can, for example, give an image, a depth map, positions, like mannequins, etc., to adjust your character's pose. Or even, and this is very interesting, a complete mood board, which the artificial intelligence can directly draw inspiration from to generate your image. As mentioned, to activate it, you just need to click here or here, and then you can drag your different images into this area, and the AI will be able to draw inspiration from them. Also, something important is that you can create your own Lora yourself. You just need to go to the Lora section and click on training here. For example, you can provide 100 or 200 images of yourself and train a Lora to very easily reproduce your face in the photos you generate. This is actually a method that's used to generate characters much more easily and consistently each time. And there you go, this way you can generate images locally. As I showed you, it has its advantages. It's free, there's a bit of tinkering involved which can be interesting, and it's also flexible because it allows us to create images that AIs generally can't generate. That's actually how many people manage to generate images with celebrities. They use a Lora that has been trained on images of celebrities and then generate images locally. But as you've seen, there are also disadvantages. The execution speed, the complexity of the interfaces and settings, and also the time it takes to find the right Lora or the right models. To wrap up, the two main reference sites are CivitAI, so you can go to any model and download it, and you'll often end up on Hugging Face links as well, which also offer various models you can download and use. Both sites are very reliable and very safe. Feel free to share your thoughts with me about local generation and what you do, and also if you have any interesting combos. In the meantime, experiment as much as you can. I think it's important in order to understand how an AI works. But for us, locally, it's not necessarily very interesting because we prefer to produce faster without having to deal with complicated configurations. Take care of yourselves and your projects. Bye.